Just waiting on a start here. Okay. So this first section is pretty basic. It's just killing some enemies, walking around, talking to some people to get through this first little mission that'll take like 3 minutes. This is probably, for this game, the only place where dialogue really matters a huge amount, despite being a dialogue-driven RPG. It doesn't really matter other than like 2 or 3 other places later in the run, but almost every dialogue matters here, like every person you talk to. So he has to go talk to this guy up here on the left, then I'll have to go talk to another guy, and then fight some guys in between. So yeah, this run starts off pretty not interesting, but it gets much more interesting very quickly after you get out of this first area. So you'll see him use Flame Blast here, which seems like it should be slow because you have to stop moving and it takes forever to cast, but it's actually the only of the 2 starting spells that's a guaranteed kill on these little wolves here, so you can just cast it and then walk away and the damage over time will kill the wolf. So after he talks to this bear guy is probably the most annoying part of this section. There's a huge group of wolves, and you ideally want to kill almost all of them with a single flame blast, but getting them lined up properly can be difficult. As you can see. He did it actually. I think he got all of them, so that's good. But you have to kind of really position them in that little corner there next to those tree-looking things. And one more fight and we're out of this first area. Alright, so the next part is going to take longer to explain than it is for him to actually do. So this is going to be an attribute point glitch. First off, you're going to see him reset a bunch. So basically what happens is whenever you put points in and hit reset, you can take more points out than you started with. And what he's first going to do is he's going to scale up to 100, so he can get 100 on every reset. 100 is the max you can get on every reset. If you get like carry over 105, it'll just say 100 and it won't be useful. So now he's going to mostly put points into magic here. If you have like 350 magic or so, 400 magic, you can kill most of the basic enemies with a single spell cast. The only other stats that really matter here are willpower and cunning. So willpower gives you a larger mana pool. You get a little bit of that, which is pretty important, and you also see him get cunning, which is useful for a couple dialogue-based options later in the game to be able to skip more. I skip a few fights. So yeah, he'll get 600 total points or so here. Go up to about 100 willpower, 120 willpower, and then just dump all the rest in magic. So right after he gets out of this, you'll see him do this out of bounds. Well, not really out of bounds, this skip. For some reason, if you go out into tactical mode while you're standing on top of like furniture or like rocks on the ground, and you try to tell your character to move somewhere, it gets confused because it can't pathfind with you on top of an object, so it'll just push you out through the wall into the closest like safe position that it can understand. So he can clip through that wall and that gets him upstairs a little faster. So next he's just going to be running around talking to a bunch of people up here. Really not much interesting going on here. Just running back and forth, doing fetch quests essentially. You also notice that he got Fireball from his level up there. That's probably one of the most useful offensive spells in the game, which is why he went to get Flaming Weapons and Flame Blast, even though neither of those are particularly good. Fireball is really good, and you really need it to do a lot of these fights fast later on. So yeah, he's almost done here, and basically once he does this, he's going to go back and get those two people and go into the basement, which is the last part of the kind of first mission of the game where you're doing the character's origin, in this case the mage origin. Also important to note that the mage origin is definitely not the fastest origin to do. Some of the other ones can be done in like less than 4 or 5 minutes, but the 3-minute advantage, or like 2.5 to 3 minute advantage you have from doing those other ones for starting origin is really lost pretty quickly by not being mage, and you'll get a good look at why. It is not just combat. Combat is definitely a big part of why you lose a lot of time, but there's a lot more to it than that, and even if combat was the same speed, you probably still would be slower playing on rogue or warrior by doing one of the other origins. Okay, now we're going to set up another skip here. Now this is one that if you've played Knights of the Old Republic or watched Knights of the Old Republic, you might be somewhat familiar with. If you spread all your party members really far apart and have hold position on so they don't follow each other, if you get far enough away and you turn off hold position, rather than them pathfinding walking all the way back to you, they'll just teleport, and if you line up properly here, you can just teleport past this door. And now we're kind of at the end of this whole basement section, skipping a huge number of fights, and we can grab this vial of blood. This room kind of gets broken a little bit by you doing it this way. So these enemies were supposed to attack you before you got that. The trigger on the ground is back this way, and also the door he clipped through is not open yet because he didn't hit this trigger here, which is what opens the door, so he has to go back and hit it to open this door here that he's exiting through right now. And then we're done with the mage origin now. He is having some weird issues with... You can get stuck on the stairs sometimes. I have not seen it happen there, but the one he got getting stuck walking up the stairs to the vial of blood, I definitely have seen happen before. We will be traveling. So now we're in Ostagar, which is kind of the second major part of the game. So now he's just going to head over to recruit Alistair, talk to Duncan, and head into the swamps. So basically all the same stuff you would normally have to do playing the game, but it'll very quickly start to look a lot different once you get into the swamps. So what he's going to be doing is, so what you're supposed to do in the swamps is you have to kill the dark spawn to get 3 vials of blood, and you're also supposed to gather the Grey Warden treaties. then bring them back to Duncan. So what he's going to do is he's going to head into the swamps and only grab the 3 vials and not the treaties. And then he's going to come back here. So the most effective way to do this is that there's a camp of Darkspawn a little bit past the start. So there's this first fight with some wolves, then there's another fight with some more Darkspawn, and then there's a camp behind those Darkspawn. You can get 3 guaranteed vial drops there. So all the vial drops are actually static, which Orc drops them. So he's just going to head over to there. Oh, sorry, I said he had to do 3 fights, he only has to do 2 here. His route has changed a bit since I last did it seriously, but I was definitely part of figuring out this route. So this fight here, he'll be able to get 3 vials from this group of guys. That's pretty bad luck there. He didn't get all of them in the range of a single fireball, which stinks. Yeah, he's got 1 there, 2 there, 3 there. He also left everyone back at the beginning by using hold position, so he can just switch to one of them to leave the area. So the purpose of getting 3 vials and not doing the treaties is that for some reason on the patch this is being played on, which is 1.01, if you try to turn in the quest but don't have all the components you need, you can still get the experience points that you would get from turning in the quest, and you can just repeat that over and over again. Also, I should mention quickly, he had to save and quit there because this patch that we play on is very unstable, and there's really bad memory leak, so these loading screens will start to get longer and longer the more loading screens you see, and the game will just eventually crash. So you have to do that a couple of times on this patch, which is kind of dumb. Yeah, so now he's going to talk to this guy a few hundred times, like 100 times or so, but he's gonna get experience until he gets up to level 14 here. So this should, wait, 14? It might be 12. But anyways, this will get him access to a lot of new spells, which is what he really wants to do here. Because he actually is not going to do any significant amount more damage on his spells, because the stats boosts don't really matter with how many attribute points he already got from the glitch. So really he just wants to gain access to a huge number of new spells. So one other thing you'll notice is that he's going to grab Shapeshifter as a specialization here. That is pretty important because it gives you access to Flying Swarm, which is an ability that gives you an 100% speed boost. So the thing that really changed this route pretty recently is that I discovered kind of that there's this ability called Anti-Magic Ward, which is what he just got. And what it's supposed to do is prevent you from having any magical effects cast on you. But and it's supposed to cancel all your current magical effects. But for some reason, if you have it up and then try to cast Flying Swarm, it just puts Flying Swarm on without actually transforming you. So it still gives you all the benefits of increased movement speed and like a damage over time cone, like radius around you. But in Flying Swarm, you're not supposed to be able to cast spells. But with this glitch, you can cast spells. So now he can just move around really fast and cast spells the whole time. So he's just going to be running like this, which is 100% boost from Flying Swarm plus 40% boost from Haste. And those are multiplicative, so he's really getting like a 280% boost or 200-something% boost. His speed. Like he's running at like 280%. It's not 240 because it applies the haste before the Flying Swarm. And then he just runs through the area really quickly and goes over to grab the treaties, and now he's kind of ready to advance to the next part of the story. So what you're supposed to do here is you're supposed to talk to Duncan and go through the Grey Warden joining, but he's not going to do that. He's just going to go over to this wooden barrier up ahead, which is supposed to block you off from going to the next part of the mission. But for some reason, it's you can just teleport it past it like that, and that allows you to get in here early. I should mention that the reason why he has to go back and grab the treaties is that when you have both the treaties and the vials of blood, it turns to night in Ostagar, and this entrance to this tower he's in only is on the night map. It's not on the day map. So now he's going to run through to the end and kill this group of enemies, because with how fast he moves around, he can just get out of combat with a lot of them as long as he leaves the rest of his party behind. So now he's going to do another skip, kind of like the one at the beginning of the game where he stood on the table. This one's standing on some rocks in a corner. That's going to just teleport him up behind this door that brings him to the next floor. Just click on it to travel through. This is another kind of teleport, like the one... He's doing this a different way. I'm not sure why he's doing it this way. Okay. Well, anyways, this is kind of just like what he just did then. There's a couple different methods to do that one. The method he used is kind of inconsistent for me. So I don't use it that way. Okay, now he just kills this ogre and he's done. So the most important thing about the ogre fights is to make sure none of your party members are really even fighting them at all, because anyone who doesn't, if he ever gets killed with anything that's not magic, so any kind of like melee weapon, you'll get like a long like kill cam that wastes like 15 or 20 seconds. So you really want to make sure that doesn't happen. So one thing that's weird that I haven't mentioned yet is that by skipping into this tower the way he did, he has these two party members who are supposed to be dead right now. And they're not supposed to be in this part of the game. And it actually automatically adds Morgan and Alistair to your party. So he technically has 5 people in his party right now. Not that that really is useful at all in any way. So in Lothering, all he's going to do is just run to where Sten is in a cage, free Sten, and then leave the area. So Sten is useful for one of the really more important glitches in this game, which I will explain a little later on. Also, what's really useful is that you normally would not be able to open this cage so simply, but because you have a rogue in your party from one of the characters who is supposed to be dead, you can just unlock it really easily. If you didn't have these people in the party, you'd be pretty screwed, because you can't get him very easily. In fact, before it was known that you could skip this, you just went and got Liliana instead in Lothering, because she can also allow you to do the same glitch. So now he only has to keep one of those 2 random party members for the rest of the game for another skip that he wants to do much later on. So you get a guaranteed random encounter on the way to Denerim, which is where he's headed next. This one is the most common one. There's 3 different variations that you can get. This one, I would say 75% of the time is the one you get on the way to Denerim the first time. So now that we're in Denerim, we're going to do the biggest sequence break in the game, which basically skips all the major like plot lines of recruiting the dwarves and mages and elves to your side, and also Redcliffe, where you have to cure the Arl's disease. So basically all you have to do is go over to this gate here. This gate's supposed to only unlock when you've hit the lands meet, but if you clip past it by teleporting someone past, you can get into Eryment's estate, which you're only supposed to be able to get to if you've gotten to the end part of the game.
Excuse me.
So if you go in here, the game just assumes you're at the right part of the game to be into this area, and it'll just give you the quest and let you advance from here. And you can just complete the game from this point forward, just doing the rest of the lands meet and then the final mission. There's no issues. Like, there's nothing that causes any soft locks or anything. The game just lets you complete from here without any issues. You don't have to do anything weird to fix it. So the most useful thing to have these other party members for is what he just did there. So you can leave them behind in areas like Eryment's estate, where you're only supposed to walk around with one character, and leave them by the door so you don't have to run back and forth yourself. So now he has to head to Howe's estate to advance some storyline there. So he's going to save and quit again here. It's really up to the individual runner how many times they think is useful, and kind of it's computer based too, so how many times you might need to do that. Our load remover, however, just doesn't count any of this time when you're not actually playing the game, so it's not really a hardware advantage or anything to have a computer that doesn't require as many exits. So there's possibility of getting 2 random encounters in Eryment. You have to travel 4 times on this map here, and yeah, so he got 1, which is kind of unfortunate. So he's just going to clip past to avoid doing the fights that are involved with doing this random encounter the way you're supposed to do it. So now we get to using Sten. So, oh, no. We have to do this a different way now. Okay, that's right. See, I've only done a couple runs since this route change. So basically what he's going to do, he's just going to run straight up to these guys here by clipping past that barrier and kill them. And once he gets in here, he will be using Sten. So what Sten does is Sten and Liliana are the 2 party members that the game allows you to kick out of your party. So the advantage of that is that you can... He's still not doing it. I don't know what he must have changed more of this rail. Okay. Well, anyways, I'll still explain that glitch anyways, because you'll see it at some point. The game lets you kick Sten and Liliana out of your party, which allows you to which allows you to do this glitch where you take 2 of your party members, tell them to talk to... You pause the game, tell them to talk to Sten, and use the first conversation that pops up to kick Sten out of the party. And then as soon as that conversation ends, it'll immediately try to play the second conversation. But Sten's no longer in your party, so it's kind of confused on what to do. So what it does is it sets your character's position to the default map position, and then it plays the same conversation you would have with Sten the first time you meet him. So then the useful thing about that is pretty much on every map, or like 80 to 90% of maps, the default map position is somewhere out of bounds, which is really useful. So there he had to wait for that little cutscene to play before he could go back upstairs, even though he already eluded the key, because for some reason that cutscene is what advances the trigger on this mission and not grabbing the key.
shall do it.
So now he's just going to purposely allow himself to get imprisoned. So this is the other major really useful thing about having this temporary party member still around. By setting hold position before he goes into that cutscene there, when he gets into prison here, it'll just leave the second party member right by the beginning of this, or the exit to this whole prison sequence for some reason. So that's what he's going to do. He just left that guy by the prison, or had a hold position on. It won't kick him out of the party like it is supposed to because he's not considered a party member that's important. And then he can just, I don't know what he's doing. Oh, he screwed it up. That's really unfortunate. He forgot to leave him on hold position. It shouldn't be a big issue. He should be able to just get out. But yeah, so if he had left hold position on going into that cutscene, he would not have to do any of this running section. He would just get out of that initial conversation with the other prisoner, and the second party member would be way up in a different part of this area, and he could just exit. Yes, he doesn't even know the right way to get out of here. That's unfortunate. So yeah, this wastes a huge amount of time. What happened to him? It's really unfortunate. And he looks like he's just trying to... So you can't leave an area unless you're out of combat, so he's got to actually run around, kill all these guys who are getting into combat with him, because he won't be able to exit through the door unless he's out of combat. And that's only for doors that are map transitions. So yeah, he's only done about half of this area now, which is kind of unfortunate. I don't know if how many of these guys up in this next hallway he'll be able to skip. He might be able to get past most of them, because there's this next area is just like a bunch of side rooms off of a main hallway. He might be able to just run straight through to the exit from there. Yeah. Oh, no. Not quite. So yeah, had he just had the other guy on hold position, this door up here would be where that guy had been. So he would just swap to the other character and then immediately be able to leave here. So you'll see him go to the party camp here. This is to avoid a chance of a random encounter, because he needs to get back to the market district, but so the default place it brings you into Eryment is the market district, so it's just easier to avoid a random encounter by going back to the camp first and then going to the market district. And that kind of helps vastly reduce the amount of chances you have for random encounters in Eryment. He'll do that one other place, most likely. Because there's only like 2 real chances you have during this whole section to go back to the market district from somewhere else on the map. So that triggers the next part of the Landsmeet. So he's done kind of the first part, which is, I would say, probably the longest part in the speedrun of the whole Landsmeet section. Next part he has to do here is go to the Elven Alienage, where he has to kind of figure out what's happening with the elves. Which typically is one of the longer parts of the Landsmeet section, but it's actually relatively quick because you can skip past a huge section of it relatively easily. Okay. So this is where you'll finally see him do that stunning glitch that I mentioned. So he first had to get rid of a default conversation with Sten that happens the first time you talk to him once he's in your party.
I see.
And now you'll see him. So now he's going to kick him out of the party, and then it'll play the second conversation, and he'll be in the default map position, which is out of bounds here. So now he's just going to run over to where the entrance to where the slave bazaar is, which is supposed to be accessed by going through a whole nother area and then going back outside. But he just is outside and can just clip over to where it is. So this is one of the areas where having extra cunning and kind of relatedly all the skill points in coercion are really useful, because he can convince these people to make a deal with him rather than having to fight them. And that's really all the alienish section now. Now he just has to head back to the market district. And then he can finally, once he's done that, talk to Eryment one last time before actually going to the Landsmeet itself. And the Landsmeet goes relatively poorly because you haven't done actually anything in the game. So no matter what you say or do, you basically get brought into combat with everyone relatively quickly. So you'll just see him kind of skip past all the dialogue, and if you had slowed it down, it would just be like, everyone doesn't side with, no one sides with you, and you have to kill everyone. Okay, so some loading issues here. So yeah, this is a good example of why you have to save and quit in the game. I usually, when I'm playing, I save and quit right before going in here. This is where it starts to get really bad for me. So yeah, he's got to go talk to Eamon once. Now he can go to the Landsmeet. So one other thing that having persuasion skill is useful for is, since he imprisoned himself, he gave himself up when he got confronted by Sir Cothrian, which is the female knight you saw earlier right before he went into prison. She'll confront him again when he gets into the Landsmeet, since she's still alive. And, if you had a low persuasion skill, you'll have to, even if you skip the first fight, you'll have to fight her there. But thanks to having good persuasion skill, he can convince her to stand down and let you go into the Landsmeet without getting, without having to fight her.
Warden.
So yeah, here she is. Now he can go forward by himself. So this fight is going to go relatively quickly. One thing to note here is that for some reason, you have to land at least one melee hit on Logain to advance this fight, and it's actually relatively easily to just use spells to take him down, and he'll just get stuck at 1 health and it won't advance to this fight, so that's why he sent all of his party members in like that to melee him, because otherwise he just gets stuck and the fight would not advance. So relatively quick fight because of having really high attribute points. And now he's done basically with the landscape. So the next place he'll have to go is he'll get brought back to Eryment's estate, wrap up there, and then he'll have to go to Redcliffe. So in Redcliffe, we're going to just have to fight a bunch of guys, and then he's going to do a setup for a pretty elaborate skip. So when we get to that, I'll try to explain it as best I can. Still with the loading screens. That loading screen is actually just relatively long no matter what. He's going to level up here, grab a couple more spells that are useful, which is Winter's Grasp and Death Siphon. So Death Siphon just lets you gain mana back from corpses that are nearby, and Winter's Grasp is just a good single target spell.
It shall be done. Yes.
So yeah, now you can just leave and go to Redcliffe. He has a chance at a second random encounter from Denerim to Redcliffe. If you get the random encounter he got, it usually doesn't happen. But sometimes if you get one of the other two random encounters that can happen on the way into Denerim, you're really likely to get that random encounter he got where you're just fighting like a group of 5 Darkspawn, and that'll waste some time. It is possible to never get that random encounter that he got. There's one that's slightly faster where you can just basically you can just get into the random encounter, turn around and leave right away. Ideally you just get that on the way to Denerim and nothing on the way to Redcliffe. It's pretty low odds though to get that combination of two things. But it's not significantly faster than just getting what he got, which is this one fight with the Darkspawn and nothing on the way to Redcliffe. So this fight is pretty annoying because a lot of times those Darkspawn just stay there. Oh, he kind of got bad luck by getting grabbed, but his fight still went well. So now he's going to go inside the castle. And we're going to set up a skip here. So the first thing he has to do before doing the skip is he has to go upstairs to talk to Riordan to figure out that one of the Grey Wardens is going to have to sacrifice themselves to kill the Archdemon, because that's how it works. You know, one of them has to die. And that'll advance it, so you talk to Morgan, where she'll tell you the next step, which is that you can avoid dying if you have some fun with her, let's say. But he doesn't want to do that. So what he's going to do is he's going to trigger the Lich with Sten again by taking his 2 party members and going down and talking to Sten, who happens to be downstairs. And he actually doesn't really care about getting out of bounds here, but what he does care about is that when he does this, it'll bring up the map screen and let him leave this area, like travel on the map, and that'll let him go somewhere else, where he has 4 people in his party, but the game kind of still thinks he's in a state where he's only supposed to have the main character. And now he can just tell his main character to talk to Morgan, and it'll trigger the same cutscene that it would have back in Redcliffe Castle by talking to her there. And that'll advance it to the end game sequence. And you can see there that cutscene was actually out of bounds. That's kind of for the same reason that the Sten one is out of bounds. It's trying to initiate a cutscene on a map where that cutscene doesn't actually happen, so it just puts you at the default map position. It doesn't really matter there because as soon as you exit the cutscene, gets teleported. Okay, so that whole purpose of getting a full party was to set up an elaborate skip, which is to skip this fight at the gates here. So by having a full party, you can use another consequence of the Sten conversation glitches, which is whenever you do it, they'll bring up the party select screen. And for some reason, the game just assumes when you're on this map that if you trigger the party select, then you finish this part of the game. Because you're supposed to be talking to Riordan, and he'll give you a party select screen on this map.
Yes.
And that'll advance it to the end of this area. But the problem is that he now can technically move to the next part of the mission, but the problem is he isn't actually able to get out of combat. So he does have to get out of bounds to get out of combat here, so that he can advance by being able to go through the gate. Because if you try to just go to the gate by walking in bounds, there's still all these enemies from this fight sequence here. And he wouldn't be able to skip past it. So now he's just going to move some people around to get them out of combat, and he's going to maneuver his main character over to where the gate is that triggers the next part of the mission. This part can be pretty annoying because sometimes when you click on this gate, it'll bring you back in bounds, and that'll bring you into combat. It actually did bring him in bounds there, but thankfully he didn't get brought into combat, so you could still leave the area. That's why you saw him quick save before running up to it. Because if he got brought back into bounds and had to do combat, he'd be in a pretty bad spot. So now you just have to go to one of these two locations, the alienage or the market, and you can just immediately leave. What you're supposed to be able to do here is kill some bosses that would otherwise appear on the final boss fight if you didn't kill them here, but he doesn't really care about these two bosses in these two areas appearing in the final boss fight. Also, one interesting thing is that you're supposed to have a sequence when you leave these two areas and head to the fort where the part of your party that split off from you back at the gates is supposed to take over, and you have to do some fights there. But he actually doesn't have any party members that he left behind. Like, he only has 3 party members, and they're all with him. So no one got left behind, so the game just doesn't trigger that sequence, which saves about 2 or 3 minutes. Because it doesn't consider the fake party members from the beginning of the game as actual party members. So even though he technically has access to them, they won't count towards that. And that's why he swapped Alistair into his party finally when he did the party select screen back at the gates. So now he just goes out, uses stun to go out of bounds again. Again, this gate can bring you inbounds if you're unlucky and bring you into combat, and then you can't leave, so that's why he quick saved again. He's gonna try to slowly maneuver his way up to this gate and hope he doesn't get brought inbounds when he clicks on it. And, okay. Oh. Did it not work? I don't know what happened to him. He had a map thing brought up like he wasn't in combat, but now it won't. Okay, it'll still let him do it. Not sure what happened there. He probably was just confused because he went inbounds and he was getting ready to like reload his save, but it actually didn't bring him into combat for some reason. It usually brings you into combat as soon as you step inbounds there. Okay, so now he has a fight outside this fort. This fight is pretty annoying, just because It's inconsistent. This dragon that you see spawned here, sometimes there's 2 of them, sometimes there's 1. Sometimes these enemies are better at running out from this gate up here that you're supposed to go through, sometimes they're not. So it's hard to say. He did get the second dragon, which is rather unfortunate. Also, he wants to try to avoid having any of his party members die, which is pretty easy for them to die because they have terrible gear, they're under-leveled. These guys deal a lot of damage. And if your party members die, and they're really far away from you, they won't revive as soon as you get out of combat. You have to like walk over near them to get them to revive when you get out of combat. You got lucky there. Alistair just barely avoided death. Also, the amount of enemies you get to come out of this gate up here seems to be inconsistent as well. He seemed to get bad luck. This is more enemies than you normally get. And then Alistair did end up dying. So yeah, see, he has to run and stay there. Ideally, you just want to stay up near this door as long as you can. And as soon as you get out of combat, click on it. But he had to stay down there and make sure Alistair stayed alive. So now you got another skip coming here. To skip the whole first floor, this one is, again, a little bit more elaborate than just using Sten. If you use Sten here, this is one of the few areas in the games where the default map position is inbounds. So you can't use that to get past this sequence. He has to use, a more like door clip out of bounds method, which is what you'll see him do here. And we're almost at the end of the game now. So we got the skip here. And one more skip upstairs, and then you have the final boss fight. So what he's trying to do here is he's trying to position Sten in a way such that when he teleports the warden back to him, the warden gets put out of bounds, and that worked properly. If you just line up perpendicular to that door, like you do for a lot of the other doors in the game, it doesn't put you out of bounds, which is unfortunate. So he has to kind of have his back facing towards the door with Sten to get out of bounds. And then he just runs over to this door here, brings him to the second floor. And on the second floor, you'll see him, again, use Sten to get out of bounds. And then run over to the exit to this area, which brings you to the Archdemon fight. Okay. I don't know when he changed this, or why he changed this. What is he doing? I don't know why he's doing it this way. I don't think that saves any significant amount of time to the way that you do it with Sten, so I'm not sure why he's doing it that way. Maybe save a second, but I don't think it would. Because where it puts you out of bounds is kind of just right up north on the map of where you start. He's going to quick save here again because of the getting into combat issue. And for some reason, if you get into combat right there, it'll just crash the game a lot of the time. I have no idea why. So get ready for a very quick Archdemon fight. So the key to the Archdemon fight is basically use vulnerability hacks, which is supposed to bring down resistances. To bring his resistances down to like -100, because the amount it brings down resistance is based on your magic skill. And he just throws some damage over time, abilities on the Archdemon, and basically just waits for him to die. He'll use a couple more spell casts of just like Winter's Grasp, Arcane Bolt, and the Archdemon will be dead. There. Oh. And that's time. I'm not sure why he paused. So yeah, pretty good run. He had bad luck. Forgot. Not really bad luck. It's unfortunate he forgot to hold position to do that skip back in the prison escape sequence. But other than that, pretty good run for him. So now, just gonna save the end game sequence. So I'm not sure if you'll see him go through this. Looks like he's gonna watch all the cutscenes, but it's really interesting when you get past this. You get into like the throne room of Ferelden, and talk to your party all for one last time. And then when you exit the throne room, you're supposed to get like a kind of a list of kind of like the Fallout type ending sequence where it just gives you like some text describing what happened to everyone after the end of the game. And it's going to be hard for you to tell here, but because it's in French and you're probably all English speaking, but it tells you about all these things that you've supposedly done, like who you sided with on the dwarves, and what happened to the elves and all that stuff, and none of it actually ever happened. It's just basically has a default for all of those choices, and that's kind of just what it assumes you did, was the default choice for each of those. So like for the elves, it's siding with the elves and killing all the werewolves. For the dwarves, it's supporting the king's son to be the new king rather than the other guy. I can't remember what his name is. Lord Eryment. And so on. So yeah, hope all of you guys enjoyed this run. It's a pretty interesting run. It's definitely, I think, not very well known. But it's pretty broken. It's definitely not anything like the experience of playing the game normally, with how fast you're running around, how easily everything dies. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, I should stick around for this marathon. A lot of fun. Give our French friends some money to raise money for muscular dystrophy. Alright, I'm out. Hey guys.